campaign slogan used by a young lady in New Jersey. She was a lawyer, which is typical. A lot of lawyers end up in politicians and politics. But her slogan was "Better with Heather." But what makes her unique is she was once a competitive bodybuilder. In her prime, her thighs were 30 inches. Put that in perspective for you, that's larger than Arnold Schwarzenegger's. She could bench press 540 pounds. Her biceps, I imagine, are probably about 10 times the size of mine. I'm huge. So. Another woman, maybe you don't take the aesthetics of Iron Women physique into account, but you got to appreciate the commitment to ultimate fitness. Her name was Colette Nelson. And she says, competitive bodybuilder, this is the day of the competitions, when they tote you out on stage. You're the most unhealthy that day. You're dehydrated. You've eaten limited food. You're taking some type of diuretic. The day of the show, I've got to tell you, you look like perfection. But inside, you feel like you're barely hanging on. I mean, many of us can relate to that statement from a Christian standpoint. We can look like perfection in our life a lot of times. But inside, we're barely hanging on. We work on our image as a nice, decent, spiritual person who has everything together. But inside, we're far from it. We're not doing very well at all. God doesn't expect us to be perfect. That's not what I'm saying in this life. But He wants us to strive for something much, much higher. To strive God's way, you have to have a focus, a commitment, a goal. So we continue through Philippians chapter 3 today. I'm not going to say that the subject matter is going to be easy today. I mean, I started with a quote that outside we look like perfection, inside we're barely hanging on. But if you would, open with me to Philippians chapter 3, verses 12 through 16. Paul just ended last week with the saying, verse 11 says that by any means possible I may attain the resurrection from the dead. Okay? And we talked about that last week, that Paul was going to go to any extreme it took to obtain the resurrection from the dead that Christ has offered him. And we talked about Paul boasting about his life a little bit, talking about, look at the things I've done, take me as example. But then he starts verse 12 this way. It says, not that I have already obtained this, or am already perfect, but I press on to make it my own, because Christ Jesus has made me his own. Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own. The one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. Let those of us who are mature think this way, and if anything you think otherwise, God will reveal that also to you. Only let us hold true to what we have attained. You're sitting here today, you have not arrived. And I think within the Christian culture, we like to think because salvation is given so freely by God, that once we have accepted Christ Jesus as Lord, and once we have made that confession with our mouth, and that we believe in our heart, and we went through the actions publicly with people, we think, I've arrived. I've got this. Paul just gave a list of not only what he's done after accepting Christ, and what he stood for as far as the law was concerned. He just gave his whole resume earlier in chapter 3. And he looks at the people and says, I want you to understand something. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I have not yet arrived. Which I think that should sink in pretty deep with a lot of us. That if Paul can give the resume of what he gave and say, look, I haven't arrived yet, that should sink in pretty deep with some of us, that we go, oh. If you haven't, that means I'm a long ways off. A long ways off. You know, Paul doesn't go into detail really in his shortcomings or anything here. You know, he doesn't give reasons why he says he doesn't arrive. But he does 3 times stress that he still has a way to go. You know, it's real easy to admit imperfection. You know, a lot of us will admit we're not perfect. I had a friend call me just last week. We've becoming more and more friends. I would tell you now he's probably becoming very slowly becoming the best friend in my life. He called me last week. He said, hey, I need to visit with you. I said, okay. What's going on? He said, well, I get off kind of late. He said, if you would, come up, we'll sit and visit. I said, sounds good. So we did probably what every teenager's done in their life. We just drove around and visited for a long time. And he started off by saying, I'm not perfect. I said, I know, none of us are. He goes, but I need to admit why. He said, I need somebody to help me. And it's probably one of the hardest conversations he's ever had with anybody. It took a long time. I got back here about 3 in the morning. We sit in the parking lot of the store he owns for a long time. Just visiting about imperfections and how to deal with it. And what to do, because he wants to be somebody that people can look to. He can guide people into the future in a loving relationship with Jesus. You know, we can admit we're imperfect, but the hardest thing to do is to get specific about that sometimes. I'm not perfect. Why? Because, see, God knows we're not perfect. That's why He sent Jesus. But the part of the relationship that He wants us to get specific with Him. God, I'm not perfect. You know that, so I'm going to go on my way. And God's like, no. Why aren't you perfect? I want to help. I want to fix these things. You know, there's a lot of speculation that in Paul's later life, as he was writing these letters, that Paul was not writing these letters himself. That somebody was writing them for him because Paul couldn't see. Paul called it, but we speculate that's what Paul keeps calling the thorn in his flesh in his letters. That he couldn't see to write, that he was going blind. And he called it an imperfection. He called it a thorn. Because it bothered him and he struggled with it. It's helpful to face our faults. You know, the longer as I've grown as a Christian and as a minister, the more acutely aware or accurately aware, however you want to phrase it, I am of my shortcomings, my inadequacies, my limitations, my weaknesses, and my faults. You know, I've been a Christian for when I was 8 years old, so 24 years now, almost. It's Some of you have been a Christian a lot longer than me. Some of you were just thinking in your head, wow, you weren't even born when I was a Christian. But we all struggle with inadequacies. We all struggle with times that we fall short. That's just a reminder that none of us have arrived. That we have that shortcoming. And that's a tough thing to sometimes to admit to ourselves. That I'm not good in this area, so I need help. So that's why our failures should become our focuses. That's why we're told over and over in life, let your greatest weakness become your strength. And sometimes it's not because we overcome the weakness, it's not because we overcome our fault. It's because we find people together around us to make us stronger. The greatest thing that came out of that conversation that night with him was not that he wanted to admit his faults, but that he looked at me and said, I need you to talk to me every couple of days and ask me how I'm doing with it. If I'm still walking the path I should be walking. I want you to help me. He wants to turn his weakness into his strength. The biggest part of that is beginning to not look back. To forget what is behind. You know, one of the greatest stories in Olympics that I remember hearing growing up. And many of you know him. His name was Greg Foster. He was set to win the 110-meter hurdle. Like his times at the World Championship were just out of this world. Greg Foster was going to win. As the gun fired off, he took off to a big lead. I mean, you can watch this. They rerun this on ESPN a lot. They'll show it. He takes off, and he's in a demanding lead. He's jumping hurdles. He hits that last hurdle, and you see his head do this number. About that time, the another American catches him, passes him up. Guys, don't look back. Looking back at your past, looking back at what's behind us. You know, yeah, there's glory days. You know, there's glory days to revel in. But when we get stuck in the glory days that are way back here, what good does that do us today? That makes us bitter at the people that have stopped the glory days. That makes us bitter at the people that won't let us relive the glory days. Or we get stuck in the past not so glorious days. The past of days that we did things that we shouldn't be doing. And we let those begin to haunt us forever. I know a lady who, she went to a lawyer to get what do you call those things? Restraining order on her husband, her ex-husband, rephrase that. Because he's been making her life miserable since their divorce. And the lawyer's like, well, tell me what's going on. So she begins to give details, and he's brainwashing my son, making my son not like me, telling him things that aren't true. And the lawyer looked at him and was mad. He said, I don't mean to be rude. He said, but you look quite a bit older. Can you tell me how old your son is? Well, he's 32. So how long ago was the divorce? 17 years. True story. The lawyer told her, man, I can't help you. Like, you've got to move past this. You've got to move on. Guys, we all have memories and things that we cling to from the past that we have to let go of. We have to be able to move past. And like I said, some of those are past failures, and some of them are just successes and glory days that we live in that don't amount to anything today. but they're not doing us any good either. They're holding us back from the potential that we could offer today. Because every day, every morning, every evening is a unique experience that we all get to be a part of. That we get to celebrate and rejoice in. Because tomorrow won't be like today. I don't think we're going to get another 1.5 inches of rain tonight. Yes, I rounded up for some and rounded down for some. I understand. But I don't think it's going to happen again tonight. The forecast doesn't say so. Tonight will be its own night. Tonight will have its own successes and failures for people around the world. That's the truth of it. Some will fail tonight. Some will massively succeed over the next 24 hours. But what are we changing when we hold on to great achievements and past failures? What are we changing today? What are we changing? What are we accomplishing? Every day is different. Every place and endeavor that we find our life in is different. We have to seek those opportunities. We have to press on. Forgetting what lies behind, and straining for what lies ahead. So what memory do you need to let go of? It's fun to reflect on the past. Just don't be shackled by it. Don't be shackled by it. Focus on the future. Pressing and straining. 3 times Paul uses those words. 3 times. You may know what they call the stance for a sprinter right before they take off. Anybody know? Any track runners in here? Anybody know? It's called the strain for a lot of sprinters. Do you know why? Because they focus so much momentum in that one movement off the block. They call it the strain. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that we strain for the future. There's a reason we're supposed to burst off that block. Paul calls this adventure that we're going through of life, he calls it a race several times in Scripture. Because there is a start line, and there is a finish line. For some, there's a lot of years between it. For some, there's not so many. But Paul says we have to press and strain towards that goal. That there are going to be unique days that offer successes and failures. And it's those days that we have to come off that block with extra momentum. Straining for the future. Pressing for the future. Endeavoring to know that we have an opportunity to make a difference. Greek word for press on is the same word that Paul used in verse 6 for being persecuted. So do we as people expend as much effort in knowing Jesus as we do in any other one aspect of our life? So what is Christ's goal for you? I want you to think about that right now. In your opinion, what is Christ's goal for you? Paul knew Christ had grabbed a hold of him. Paul knew that Christ had a very specific ministry for him. In a very literal way, Paul felt he had been knocked off at his feet. So has Jesus ever grabbed a hold of you? Do you think you understand what your purpose is in this life? Why has God put you here? Are you fulfilling that purpose? The things that will last for an eternity. Are you forward-looking? Are you positive about the future? Because at the end, a prize is waiting. And that prize is not measured upon your successes and failures. That prize doesn't get smaller every time you fall on your face or bigger every time you succeed. Because when God called you, and when God put a call on your life to become a Christian and to follow and endeavor in Him each and every day, you were measured and tested at that moment. And the neat part, because of the sacrifice Christ made for us, we were found worthy. So that back there doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is what we're going to do with our life and how we're going to change things around us. Olympic wreath. Well, we see them all the time when the Olympics happen. I love sports illustrations. We see them all the time. Olympic wreaths are made of what? Does anybody know? You know it. It's an olive branch. It's a weed. You know what happens to a weed when you trim it and make it into a wreath? It begins its dying process. And that Olympic wreath is going to die. I would love for you, if you have a computer, to sometimes sit down and Google past Olympic venues and see how many of them are just utter places of chaos and disgust now. And there are once this majestic venue where things happen, right? It's where all the prizes were won. It's where the things were done. It's where people accomplish great feats in our world. And now they're nothing. But for some of us, after we're gone, and maybe all that we are is just a memory. And we may be just a memory to just a few, just one or two. And that's a tough thing to take in. That I'm just a memory for one or two people possibly. And so Paul's whole thing is, what is that memory going to be to them? What kind of difference are you going to make for them? That you're not just an Olympic wreath. That your memory stands strong. That you don't base your life on your past accomplishments and failures. But you base it on what God has to offer to come. And you go seeking that prize daily. Because as you seek that prize, you're going to affect people in wonderful and majestic ways. Guys, we've all been there. We've all done it. We've all took over a position or something in our life where we don't do it like so-and-so. We don't accomplish it just the right way. See, God didn't put that call on your life. God didn't put that call on anybody's life to be so-and-so. He gave you a call in a ministry for a reason. And now He asks you to go and get it. For you to go make the difference. For you to be the reason somebody finds Him. We can hang our heads. We can be sad. We can be upset. I can give you a lot of stuff in my past life, the choices I have made. And we can sit down and we can talk about how clinging to them could have devastated me. And I'm glad I haven't. I'm glad God doesn't bring those back up with me. We grow. We grow from our successes. We grow from our failures, and we leave them there. And we continue to strive, continue to press on, awaiting that prize that is awaiting us in heaven. Guys, the path that leads to God is in front of you, not behind you. Are you on that path? Are you focused on what gets you to that eternal glory? Matthew 28 tells us what? Go and make disciples of all nations. Preaching, teaching. Being the love. Being the witness. So don't be focused on what's behind. Focus on what God has in store for you each and every day. And make a difference with your life. Make a difference. Pray. Father God, we thank you for this time to come together, to praise and worship you. And God, we thank you that we are not held back by our past. We thank you that we can stumble and fall in this world and be picked up by you. Well, Father, we just ask now that as we continue to strive for you each and every day, that you help each and every one of us to let go of the past and begin to focus solely on you, to follow after you each and every day of our lives. It's in Jesus' name I pray.